Dance Cleveland has brought MOMIX many years. We've brought them at least 5 or 6 times since the 80s.
We go back.
Go back, exactly. And this time we're bringing Viva MOMIX, which is kind of your best of, if you will, production.
Well, it's the best we could do, yes.
Yeah, so we'll see different scenes from Alchemia, from Lunar Sea, all different ones.
Yes.
And a lot of our audiences are familiar with MOMIX, but some of our audience members are not. So could you give us a little bit of background on yourself? I know that you originally were a dancer with Globalist, for example, before starting MOMIX, but were you a dancer as a child? I've read that you were actually living and growing up on a cow farm before becoming a dancer. So tell me a little bit, how did you go from a cow farm to becoming a dancer?
Well, I've always had agri interest from the very start, but I was born and raised on a Holstein farm in northern Vermont, and my father's dream was therefore mine, which was to create the perfect Holstein Friesian cow, but you know he passed away in the middle of haying season, and my mother, his nurse, sent me out to ski. And race with the Austrian ski team in Oregon at Timberline Lodge. It's a glacier in the summer, so I didn't go to ballet school in the summer when I was at that age when many do. So I had a beginning in the outdoors of northern Vermont as a farmer, quickly into a physical life, learning how to be a downhill racer with the Austrian ski team, who were courageous, super powerful, wonderful people. These are ex-Olympians who now taught out at Timberline Lodge in Oregon on this glacier. And then of course I went to Dartmouth to study with Al Merrill, who was the U.S. Nordic coach. And cross-country skiing I started to take up. So I had an agricultural background and a ski background, and to top it off, I majored in English romantic poetry. So in a way, you keep putting whatever the accidents your life presents to you and into the so-called alchemical pot of how do you see yourself progressing, you know, in this new mix. It's as I say, an alchemical metaphor for just how we make shows, jumping right to MOMIX, in which it is a nice incorporation of my athletic and physical interest and ways of expressing myself through the body, through sports, and through milking cows. You know, I was very much into a physical life. Yes. Yes. And then when I came back after forming this company, Globalist, and even before that, we had a company. And why you're asking why this happened? Well, it was during the late '60s, early '70s. When there was the socio-political climate in this country was pretty seriously run into the woods, give up, forget about being a businessman or a doctor, and learn how to drum on hollow spruce logs and be physical and music and dance and all this. It's part of that generation running away from the Vietnam War, escapists, escape into aesthetics. I've been trying to put an aesthetic, whatever that is, onto the athletic, whatever that is, you know. So we had this interest in putting on theater because it was a way to escape and fantasize. And what was really important for us wasn't what was the imagination. And I think in the show, jumping to MOMIX and to the people who may very well come to see it, it is really made from a mix of a lot of different sensitivities to things beyond just the dance world, but it involves, for me, anything that's musical, that's moving, and whether it's dance or not is not so important. Although it's important to have categories, but I think we are more MOMIX. It's a mix of athletics and dance and lighting and coloring and reflecting in many of our shows. Nature does nurture and cause the inspiration. So all that country background and that skiing background has kept me in the country skiing as we're making new dances. And so I use that as an inspiration. Sunlight, ice cold mountain lakes. I take a very athletic approach to choreography by putting on my headset and dressing like I'm Admiral Byrd in the South Pole or somewhere. And I have my ski poles now and just walk out the door onto the slopes, into the backwoods, into the fields, striding like a cross-country skier, but listening to music from our new production. And so I'm working as I'm trudging through knee-deep snowdrifts.
That was going to be one of my questions, actually, was, how during COVID, you and I were talking earlier, how a lot of us are separate and working in our own spaces. But I know that you have a rehearsal area for your dancers. You guys have been rehearsing. And as you mentioned, like, you can still be working as you're skiing. So you have your headphones on and you might be skiing, but you're still maybe doing choreography. It's
all about the head. Feed your head. And I do this by moving. I take 3 cold showers a day so I can feed my head to be clear when Cynthia comes down and creates this masterpiece of a dinner fireside with candlelight. It's all almost the staging of your nightly dinner, and with recorders and everything. And you share creative ideas. As John Lennon would say, you never know when you're going to be attacked by one, but so be prepared. Wired in the wilderness is what I do in order to mine the mind by pushing the body through the back oak in knee-deep snow.
Well, you can definitely see all of that inspiration in the pieces.
Well, you know what it comes down to, and for your audience, I think the takeaway is one thing that I've always talked about, which is the big E, energy. Einstein coined that idea that without it, there's no life. So if you can come out more enlivened by the magic, the physicality, the humor of the human body, and how the human body connecting to the plant and the animal and the mineral, and doing things that you didn't think were quite possible, and maybe helping you see things that at first were invisible to you. And then if you walk out with a smile on your mask, then you can, and a little less gravity in your step, then the show has been a great success for everyone.
Well, I think that it often is a great show for, we always say it's a great show for everyone, because kids come to the performances and often it might be one of the first modern dance performances they've ever seen. And they're just amazed with the illusions that your dancers create on stage.
Yes, I think the child mind is also the mind of MOMIX somewhat, and there's a connection made immediately, and they have no rules how to respond to it other than with loud screams. When we do the kids shows, it really shocks all of us because of the soundtrack on top of the show. It's this verbal outburst in the dark. Yeah, I know. It's like mob psychology. No teacher can get after one for screaming because it's dark. Everybody's screaming. It's very, very cool. If I were making a
video, we're thrilled that you guys are celebrating 40 years. I have to ask, when you first founded MOMIX, did you envision that the company would be touring and doing everything that it's doing 40 years later? I mean, you guys.
Well, back then I didn't. To ask about envisioning or future, back then I didn't think so much about now. I'm not Chinese in that way, or Indian.
Living in the moment.
They think in a larger arc of 200 years from now. Do you ever think what MOMIX is going to be like when you're physically not here? Yeah, I do think about that. Keep recording, keep recording. Throw those little messages in the bottle. I'm really an archivist more than anything. I never like to finish what I start to create. I get bored halfway through and send it on to the, a subordinate to figure it out. Not try making a joke. Well, so
do you collaborate with your dancers when you're in the
of course, yes. Process? Yes, I do. We might be in terms of creating something new, you have to go in. It's a psychodramatic situation, and you need to have everyone on board because it's a team effort of directors and choreographers and movers that can understand the imagery that is being suggested, so that their bodies have the intelligence and the actorial ability to become an antelope or an aardvark or a piece of a Cheshire cat. How to we with MOMIX, I think there's a lot of interest in seeing how the human body can create things that, as I say, are connected to the insect world and the animal world. And then those connections are important. I suppose that is a subject of life, is how do you find connections in this remote world to energize us, really. And with that energy, you have more oxygen to give into a room when you come in. Hopefully that's what they say about you, is that you brought oxygen to the conversation.
Yeah,
So,
no, that's beautiful.
so that's without, and it's specifically, I could tell, the people watch MOMIX, and this particular show, as you say, as I said, was it's a compilation album, if you think of it in musical terms, of highlights from various full productions we've done over 40 years. So it's a nice cross section of the aesthetic, it's we have many things to choose from. So this is the best we could do by having 12, 14 pieces from various productions, but they have to be seen as one show dynamically. So that's some of the decision making to make something work as yet another show. Viva MOMIX. It's been back, and part of the dynamic of MOMIX is more like almost a rock concert, in that they're short pieces, 3-5 minutes, like a compilation album of music, but it's physical visual theater in this case. It's a mad world. MOMIX really doesn't try to say how the world is. We get enough of that in the front pages and cable news, but how it might be in a fantasy, how it might be in a child's mind.
I think that's
our latest show is based on Alice in Wonderland. It's called Alice. Hopefully, if it all goes well, we can all meet live, and we'll bring it back to Ohio.
Yeah, so we love having the company every few years. I know that it's probably one of our most presented companies, actually, in the history.
That's nice to hear. That's exciting.
So because your dancers have to be able to use their imaginations and, take on the form of an animal or sea creature, or what is something unique that you feel like you look for in a dancer when you're selecting new dancers for the company? Because I feel like it's got to be a very different skill set than, say, classical ballerina, for example.
Well, MOMIX is sort of like Lloyd Webber, and the audition for Starlight Express would be completely different from an audition to Phantom. So, we make different shows and have different physical requirements. So in an audition, if we were auditioning for them to replace someone that's left the company and known pieces, we would frame an audition around those pieces to see how they basically looked. And if we're looking for making a new show, there are a lot of dancers, maybe they don't have the most incredible technique, but they have something else. They're able to improvise and play with material that you're offering them. And so there are some in the ballet world that they say, je déteste création. I hate creation because it's too much pressure. Just tell me what to do.
Sure.
There's a certain group, and you find that in auditions a bit. And another important part is their innate sense of musicality. That's a really important. You can sense someone in an improv, in an audition. We are known for giving good auditions. People really find them very entertaining and helpful as a workshop. But we might give them a minute of a solo out there, whatever, not telling them how to move, but just let's see you move. And we videotape all this and watch it and all this. It's quite fascinating. But so they have to have that innate and this musicality. But I wanted to say before, one of the most important things in these auditions is that the auditionees show an honest reaction to the director's humor, and they have to appreciate that humor, and you sense that helps a lot, getting to at least the callback.
I'm sure.
It's funny. I bring this up because I go into the studio now and everybody wears masks, and I go in, I have a cup of coffee, I'm a little jazzed up, and I want to be, the director. When the man comes in, everybody listens. So I have to have something to say. and I usually make some, some comment about the weather or how I nearly slipped off the steps. Just make up something to catch their ear. But I realize with their masks, I can't tell if they're laughing at my jokes. So I
Ah,
kind of like I need to even play a laugh track on the headphone, something.
there you
Yes.
go.
Yeah. Well, that's something about MOMIX. You ask another question. I'm happy to chat. If I
Sure.
miss
Well,
something.
I think you talked about MOMIX, like a mix of things. Is that how MOMIX got its name? Can you tell us a little bit about how the creation of the name MOMIX came to
Well,
be?
when I was choreographing for Holstein Friesians, which is what I did in the Vermont Theater, my
Hmm.
first choreographic experience was putting a white sheet over my head and running in front of 50 head of black and white Holstein Friesians at my family farm. That's where it got its start. And I had the Vermont Council on the Arts and 40 witnesses watching something they'd never seen before, which was a stampede of milking
Milk
black and
cows.
white Holsteins coming directly at you. Cows are most curious. They go after a little Casper figure. I put a white sheet over my head and ran in zigzag patterns.
Oh my
So it
God.
was just a credible visual. And we had to, just before reaching the audience, I would dive into a ditch. The cows would lose their object of pursuit. Someone would ring a little bell, and we would be coaxed. The performer or the audience would be walking on a 3-mile tour around the family farm with all these various little choreographed site-specific images following the nature of that
Hmm.
of that walk. In the end, we encouraged the audience to take off their clothes and swim across the family pond to cleanse themselves before they came up into the kitchen and had hot soy bread and maple tea or something. I don't know, and then talk about their experience. So those were the formative years, and I wanted to say Anne Carlson, who wrote Silent Spring, a
Hmm.
very important book about environment and what have you. But her mother was so upset with her because she wanted her to be a writer. And she was hell bent on being an oceanographer.
Hmm.
It just turns out that her experience several years, in Wellesley, Massachusetts, as an oceanographer, informed her to write this magnificent piece. That's Silent Spring. And she never would have been that writer if she hadn't had those experiences
Experiences.
give her something to write about. you
Exactly.
know
Yeah. So
so
little did
that's
you know your
interesting.
experience, like you said, on the farm and your experience with skiing, it all ends up contributing to.
Yeah, you don't deny it. You just try to move through it the best you can. Like you say, this is what you are, and this is what we could be, as long as you agree that the fantasy and this dream state is okay. It's and so going back to the workshop, once the people come to a callback and a second callback. There have been people in our company, by the way, that saying, it's been 5 years, Mr. Pendleton. Like, am I still in the company? I've been touring for 5 years. I said, no, we're
Sure.
still keeping a close eye on you. We'll let you know if we ultimately hire you. It's a long callback.
Wow.
It's an ongoing joke with us. Anyway, they certainly when you get into the studio, uh, you have to be as someone like I do a lot of photography. I
Mhm.
do several hundred
Yeah.
pictures a day on my walk. I I find it trains the eye, which trains the brain, and gives me a chance to be kind of like really feel that you clicked something that no human had ever seen before. Some dead root in a 40-acre woods of swamp and bramble, covered with snow in an odd shape of it, very shamanistic and druidic and pure adventure.
Mhm.
And I photograph continuously on my iPhone 13. I never leave home without her, but she makes a pretty good picture. And now coming back and saying, how do I use that passion, that interest? How
Mhm.
would that affect itself, reflect itself in the MOMIX show? And certainly now, so I look at the production values, lighting, is just as important as a dance move.
Mhm.
And many times I find in photography, uh, and is that you can photograph something, and as the light changes, what you photographed became something else.
Yes.
And so this endless idea of metamorphosis by just subtle discrete changes is close to living at a high pitch, which I aspire to do, as I as I reach my autumnal years.
Your prime, right?
You're at my prime. Yes, yes. Is it Elon Musk? He's got all kinds of investments now. People are investing in to be 120 years old now because he's got this little pill he's hawking. So, some
Well, tell
the
us what
fountain of youth.
what do you hope that audience will take away? I know we've talked about illusion, we've talked about, the magic of MOMIX. What is the one thing that you hope people will take away walking out of the
I
performance?
hope they take away a little less weight from their own being, and as I say, walk with a spirited gait, having been oxygenated and energized by what they just experienced. That's what I would hope. A little less gravity in their step would be good.
I think we can all use that right now.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, I think it's a wonderful antidote to as I say, how the world is rather than how it might be in a MOMIC show. So I think we would get that. People will get it. I hope.
I'm sure they will.
And yeah,
The
so
world will feel a little bit brighter, I think, after coming out of the world of MOMIX.
well, yes, and now this is the prelude to things better that are coming.
Yep.
Hopefully,